Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined this week by the man at the center of the news, the new Attorney General of the state of Missouri, Eric Schmitt. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be here.
Congratulations on your new appointment as the Attorney General. Huge week. It was great to see you and your family. Got to come to Jeff City for the announcement. Tell me this. You were state treasurer. You've been a state senator. Why did you want to be Attorney General?
Oh, I mean, I think growing up in North St. Louis County, I saw how hard my dad worked. My dad worked 7 days a week in the midnight shift, and I saw.
There wasn't a bigger smile in that room than your father's.
My dad was pretty happy and proud. But I didn't know any lawyers growing up. I saw how hard my friends' parents worked, and I understood at an early age that the ability for people to pursue their dreams and pursue happiness with all these important documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, created this framework for people to pursue happiness, right? And so. I fell in love with the law at a young age, so I wanted to go to law school. I felt like I wanted to be a part of the system where you fought for people and you fought for those ideas and the American idea, what that meant. And it's pretty unique in the history of the world, right? So I felt like being an attorney, you could be a part of that. And so I was the first person in my family to go to college right out of high school. I got a scholarship to go to law school. I was an editor of the Law Review, and that's where my journey started, really, with the law. And then my experience with Stephen, later on in life when I became a father, really inspired me with his challenges. To enter public service, and so that announcement day, those two things kind of coming together: my love of the law, my wanting to serve my state as Attorney General, as the lawyer for 6 million Missourians, is a really special honor. It is
a really special office of state, one of maybe the top 2 or 3 offices in the state of Missouri. It's got to be neat, though. Folks that watch this show know you. You're not a silver spoon guy. You're not an insider. Your family worked for what they had. To get that call from the governor of Missouri to be the Attorney General, can you tell us kind of behind the scenes, what was that like?
So I was actually at White House Retreat, which is a Jesuit retreat house on the banks of the Mississippi in South St. Louis County. It's something that I do every year. I started doing it when Stephen was diagnosed, and it's a very important place for me. But it's a silent retreat. So I did have my phone with me, and when the governor's number popped up, I broke my vow of silence.
There's got to be a couple corollaries where you can't take a call.
Right, I think the good Lord will forgive me for that one. But we had a great conversation with the governor. I was incredibly grateful and humbled by his confidence in me. He's doing a great job as governor. And so to be given this opportunity again to represent the people, growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, again, not really knowing many lawyers growing up, it's just something that I'm humbled by, and I mean that sincerely. It's something the responsibility I don't take lightly, but I'm going to take it seriously and take that work ethic that I've had throughout my life to this job, which is what I'm looking forward to.
So the reaction of your appointment has been very good, not just from some conservative groups, but from some left-wing outlets like the Post-Dispatch have said this was probably the right choice. That's got to feel good, not just for you, but it's got to feel good that your appointment has made the governor look good.
Well, I mean, look, you just try to conduct yourself in a respectful way over the course of your years in public service, and I've always tried to work with people. I mean, I clearly have my views, and I'm a constitutional conservative, but that doesn't mean you can't listen to people, and that doesn't mean you can't take the best ideas from other folks and incorporate it. I think that's been my record. A good example of where that kind of met the law was with Senate Bill 5. With some of the things that happened in Ferguson, it became clear that a lot of some municipalities were treating people as nothing more than ATMs. And so that was a broad coalition that we worked with to bring about change, and that was African American clergy, with the ACLU, with conservative groups, with law enforcement, coming together to try to find solutions. That's generally been my style, and that's the kind of, I think, style I want to bring to this office as well.
So that style, let's talk about that for a second. Different attorney generals have different views of things. There's been some criticisms of the office. It kind of came at a political time. But it does seem like because of those, there'll be a lot of folks watching you as you approach the office. What kind of attorney general do you want to be as far as stylistically? Are you going to be somebody that can sit down and listen to some of the protesters in St. Louis, but still be the top law enforcer? That's a tough needle to thread.
Well, I think, look, first of all, you have to be sincere, right? Yep. And you have to really want to engage folks and listen. So I intend to get around the state and talk to as many people as I can. We're going to get around and talk to local prosecutors. We're going to talk to local law enforcement, find out what their needs are, how I can be helpful. And that's really what this process is now. And it's not just the 45 days or so for the transition. That'll extend into the tenure. I want to be an attorney general that people have faith and confidence in. I believe that everyone should be treated fairly under the law. The rule of law is really important to me. So whatever your race or religion or your creed is, the law guarantees that you're treated equally in that courtroom. And it's a big deal to me. I mean, it's a country where you resolve disputes in the courtroom, not in violence in the street. And that's an important guiding principle, I think, for the office, to understand that everybody deserves a fair shake under the law. Everybody ought to be treated equally, and that's the kind of Attorney General I want to be.
So the way it'll work is you'll actually take office in January when Josh Hawley goes to the U.S. Senate, is that correct?
Yep.
So the transition period you have now, I guess their office is working with you on bringing you up to speed on what they're working on and some of the cases involved?
Yeah, I mean, there's literally tens of thousands of cases and hundreds of lawyers, and so we want to get a sense of what's happening and get briefed on those. I had a great conversation with Attorney General Hawley on Sunday night. The only person I really talked to about it other than my family before the announcement. But Attorney General Hawley and I have gotten to be close. He's a friend. He's a smart guy. He's a sincere guy. He's a family guy. And I look forward to working with him in this transition and moving forward.
Say what you want. Josh Hawley, when the state was in a precarious situation, had just a spine of steel. I mean, people may criticize the office, but there is a spirit of boldness and courage that he brought to that office in his short time. I think he'll go down in history as one of the better attorney generals just for the performance this year.
Well, I think, look, and he's going to be a great senator. I spent a lot of time with Josh on the campaign trail. He worked his tail off. He got around to every corner of the state. And I think he's going to represent who we are as Missourians. But and by the way, I also think he's been very generous and offered to help in this transition, which is helpful to me. I mean, you're moving into a new constitutional office that has important responsibilities as it relates to enforcing state laws. So I'm looking forward to that. We've had a good relationship, and I think that'll bode well for the transition as well.
So as you move forward, there's one signature accomplishment you had in the state Senate. It was SB 5. There's some municipalities just basically profiteering off their citizens, writing tickets just for the money, basically. You wrote some legislation to curtail that. Obviously, a piece of legislation that huge, the implementation of that's going to take time. That's going on right now. I kind of get the sense if you're a person who maybe you feel like has been profiteered on, having the person that wrote the law against that in the AG's office is probably a good thing.
Well, look, I believe at the core of my soul that people ought to be treated as individuals, and they ought to be treated fairly, and they shouldn't just be viewed as a mechanism for generating revenue or as ATMs. And that's why that passion that I brought to that debate, and that passion that I brought to sort of rectifying some wrongs and remedying those wrongs, is the same kind of passion I'm going to bring to this office. I love the state. I'm a sixth-generation Missourian. You know, my family came from Germany. Through the Port of New Orleans, settled in places like Tipton and Pilot Grove, humble beginnings, and so to have this opportunity and to have the confidence of the governor to be the Attorney General is something that I take very seriously. I'm looking forward to it. It's a great job, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Eric Schmitt, the next Attorney General in the state of Missouri, thank you for joining us on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back with Gregg Keller, the great hair, will be joining us for our Opinion Maker panel. But before that, go to ShowMeMissouri.com. Show Me Missouri with an AH, like it's supposed to be said. The history of Missouri, one county at a time. This week we're in Scotland County, the home of the tallest woman in world history from Scotland County, Missouri, a terrific Pepsi bottling plant, and there was actually an airplane factory right there in Memphis, Missouri. Go to ShowMeMissouri.com, learn the history of Scotland County, and with a shout out to Brandon Alexander and Mike Lodewagen. But before that, come back and join us for the second part of This Week in Missouri Politics after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Looking to get quality insurance at a price you can afford? Now you can, thanks to CFM Insurance. Select from our broad range of farm, home, and rental property coverage. Find an agent right in your local area, as CFM is represented by a network of 200 independent agencies throughout Missouri. For personal and dependable service, from a company with a history of insuring the families of Missouri that dates back to 1869, visit WeInsureMissouri.com and find an agent near you today.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics, Opinion Maker Panel Time. Representative Bruce Franks from St. Louis. Welcome back, sir.
Always.
Always have the great sweatshirt. My daughter loves them.
Gotcha.
J.P. Johnson, Democratic activist, maybe running for the chair of the party, right?
Yes, sir.
Glad to have you here.
December 1st. Thanks.
Gregg Keller, I'm not sure. There's only one man I know that can post-edit liberal media stories, and that's you. Maybe the most influential person in the Republican Party now.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you. Shamed Dogan, representative from West County, St. Louis. Let's start in. Your former state senator was on earlier in the show. He is now the Attorney General of the state of Missouri. Tell us something about Eric Schmitt that maybe people know from being his constituent.
Well, other than the fact that he's the tallest Attorney General in history, Eric is a dedicated public servant. You know, I've known him since before he ran for office, and it's very exciting to have somebody who is going to represent all Missourians, all 6 million of us, and who's accomplished things. You know, Senate Bill 5 was beneficial for the entire state. Post-Ferguson, Eric has a great family, and I'm just thrilled about, you know, his promotion to that position.
Gregg Keller, I mean, look, when you look at people that are truly rising stars, people that could legitimately move to the next level of government but also do a good job, I think Eric Schmitt started this process when Holly won as probably the front runner. He had a great hand. He played it well. I mean, Eric Schmitt aggressively sought this position. And if you saw him in action, when he really wants something, when he dials in, he really went after this position. But I kind of felt like it wasn't just the politics. It might have been the life he's led and the integrity he's led that life with that put him in that position as the front runner to begin with.
He's a conservative St. Louisan, to be sure, but he is a conservative with a heart. He's got a son who's special needs, really cares about issues with regards to education, special education. Autism has been a leader on those issues, both as treasurer and when he was in the Missouri State Senate. This is a guy who's going to be a national rising star for a long time, and it was a brilliant move by the governor because now he gets to go ahead and fill the treasurer space as well too. This is the governor putting really qualified, really good people into office, while at the same time making his political job easier in the future as well.
J.B. Johnson, he was going to pick a Republican, right?
Certainly.
And so to pick somebody that, look, is an attorney, qualified to do the job, has been vetted by the statewide electorate as state treasurer. I think it was probably the natural choice out of the gate, but I think Parson probably, I've even seen many Democrats give him plaudits for picking probably the best person for the job.
Certainly. Well, as a Democrat, I think, particularly given how Jay Barnes handled the former governor's quote-unquote trial in the legislature, I think Jay Barnes probably would have been the best choice. But again, that's me as a Democrat looking at just the evidence of what Jay Barnes accomplished. What I will say is Eric Schmitt, fantastic choice. He's a fairly inoffensive choice for Attorney General, which is why I found it ironic that you said a conservative who's compassionate and has a heart. That kind of implies that conservatives don't. But that being said, I do think the Attorney General's position will be a difficult one to challenge for Democrats because he is quality. As a political practitioner, I like people of substance, of quality that handle these positions because you at least have confidence that they can do the job. And I think Eric Schmitt can do the job. He just wouldn't be my choice, obviously,
well, the one
of the things that I care about.
The season we've came out of, Eric Schmitt has the utmost integrity. Certainly. He will never embarrass this governor. He will never embarrass that office.
Or the state.
And I think he will do the job competently.
Certainly.
You know, Bruce Franks, you're somebody that actually knows Eric Schmitt a little bit. I saw several Democrats compliment the choice. Now, I'm sure that if you could have picked, you would have picked someone more liberal, a Democrat, but of the rational situation, I saw many Democrats applaud the governor's decision, and I think maybe they were more applauding Eric Schmitt.
Mm-hmm. I think it speaks to who Eric Schmitt is as a person, because the new trajectory in politics, like people want to believe in people, right? Not just politicians. And I think the good thing about Eric is, you know, we disagree on stuff fundamentally, but at the end of the day, he's a great person. As Gregg said, with his son and his fight with tuberous sclerosis, you know, that's kind of where we connected, because I have a very special young man who has the same disease in my life. And so being able to do that, play basketball with him, and outside of that, right, like, you speak about Senate Bill 5 when people were talking about predatory policing and these municipalities and the stuff that was going on. He was the champion, you know, behind that. And so to have somebody from the opposite side of the aisle, in my opinion, who's willing to work across the board and who just cares about the people, that's very important. So I think I agree with Jay Barnes. You know, he's a great guy, but I think they couldn't have picked, you know, a better person for this position.
J.B. Johnson's an interesting thing. There are places where maybe a rural, mostly white community who doesn't want the government harassing them can connect with places in like North County where SB 5 would be involved, where you have communities who are truly preying on. At first, they prey on the people driving through there. Then they prey on, when that begins to drop, they prey on their own citizens. Right. It wasn't an easy bill to take on. It is very hard, I think, to be from St. Louis and explain that to somebody in Southwest Missouri, how this happens and why you should care. I thought that may have been his biggest accomplishment, and now he's in the same building with those Supreme Court. Right. This is going to be on the court at the end of the day. Right. He's in a building now where he can influence those people. To me, if you don't take this municipal money and give it to the schools and take the profit motive out of it, I don't know that you'll ever actually fulfill what he was trying to do.
So let's look at it this way. I think a lot of St. Louis people in Missouri from large municipalities, I think there's a lesson to be learned at how Eric Schmitt has actually handled himself, how he's comported himself as a human being, but also as a political practitioner, how he built the relationships. You know, like you said, he has the utmost integrity. I think that goes a long way. If you're a Democrat, you look at that as an example in terms of how to reach out to people in rural communities. I think Bruce and Peter have actually done a very good job of reaching out to folks in rural Missouri and saying, hey, the Democratic Party is not this offensive party. It shouldn't offend your sensibilities. And if you look at the issues that we just passed in November, we passed Democratic issues. We just didn't elect Democratic candidates. Eric Schmitt, as someone from St. Louis who can translate statewide, I think is an example for all Missourians.
But Dogan, we talk about SB 5. Is not the natural step of that to do like the Highway Patrol and the sheriff's departments, take those ticket money and give it back to the schools so cities don't have a profit margin to harass their citizens?
Yeah, I mean, policing for profit, right? That's what Eric talked about. And we all support law enforcement, but we want law enforcement to be doing the right thing for the right reasons. And I don't think a lot of people sign up to be a law enforcement officer so that they can, you know, harass citizens for, you know, nitpicky, you know, traffic violations. We want to reduce crime in the state of Missouri because St. Louis, Kansas City, Springfield are all in the top 10 for violent crimes. And focusing law enforcement on what they should be doing instead of on, you know, these kind of minor violations, that was a huge step in the right direction to get law enforcement focused on their true job and away from, and I think, you know, rural Missouri understands this too. The original law that SB 5 was based on was from Max Creek, right? Part of rural Missouri where they were, you know, unfairly enforcing these traffic violations as well. And so it's something that benefited the whole state, not just St. Louis. And I think that's the approach that Eric takes to this job, is he's a former treasurer and now to be Attorney General for the whole state.
Gregg Keller, before we go, I want to ask you, now that the Attorney General is now the State Treasurer, now the Attorney General, the State Treasurer's office is open. Parson has a long list of people. Shamed Dogan's been mentioned. Former state senator who works in the office, David Pierce, has been mentioned. Sandy Crawford. What do you think he starts to look for now to fill that role?
I think you need to be looking for someone who is a woman, someone who comes from a minority community. I think this is a governor's mansion that very much realizes that our party can't and won't be a party of white men. We need to have someone to kind of round out the ticket and make other people from the rest of the state comfortable with the Missouri Republican Party. I mean, we are the supermajority party now, and we need to govern like it.
Let's talk about Clean Missouri, something you've been very vocal about. It did pass overwhelmingly. Now it looks like there's going to be a court challenge. That would be the first step, right?
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be a court challenge. I mean, at the end of the day, this is not going to survive 2 years, and I think a lot of conservative Republicans like myself are just licking their lips for the opportunity to gut this thing and tear it apart.
To be specific, we're talking about the ethics part. I don't think anybody cares about.
No one cares about that.
But the way you draw the legislative districts coming in, and they don't get drawn in 2020, they get drawn after the census, which is sometime around, we've learned late, it can go into the 2 years later. So you start with a lawsuit. What will be the tenets of that lawsuit?
I don't know exactly what the tenets of that lawsuit will look like. I'm not a lawyer. But we will be going after the George Soros gerrymandering, which of all the things I found most distasteful about Clean Missouri, and that's a very long list of things, I think the one thing I might have found most distasteful was that they went ahead and that was George Soros's real goal. And you know it's his real goal because he's been doing that in municipalities and states all over the country. So what did they do? They went ahead and threw in some other junk that no one really cares about that's going to poll well when it's on the ballot. But really at the end of the day, their plan is to decimate the entire legislative map in Missouri because Democrats have found that they can't win without cheating.
Shamed Dogan, is this something that you see your colleagues in the House take on during session? Is it, and what can you actually do? I mean, it did pass a vote of the people.
It did, and I think people were supportive of the ethics reforms, and that's one of the ironies of it is that, you know, they talked about lobbyist gifts so much, but it doesn't actually ban lobbyist gifts. So I think we need to come back with a real ethics reform proposal that's not going to subject your citizens' emails to their legislators. I mean, that was kind of snuck in there as well. This thing where they're going to sunshine any and every communication from constituents to their legislators. I don't think people realized how damaging that's going to be to their ability to communicate frankly and honestly with their legislators. So we're going to take a look at those two things, a real lobbyist gift ban, looking at doing something to protect citizens' privacy rights when they contact their legislators, and then the gerrymandering part, which is going to decimate the Black Caucus. So those three things really need to be fixed.
Representative Franks, it looks like the Republicans have decided the way to do this is try a court challenge, maybe works, maybe it doesn't, but then come to the legislature and try to work around the edges, maybe put something else on the ballot. Will House Democrats, is there some things you can work on in that space, or is it just going to be a fight?
I mean, it's probably going to be a fight. Do I think it's some things we could probably work on? Of course. I think it's always some things we could sit down. But I kind of take offense to what Gregg said, because when you talk about a party cheating to win, I mean, we can really go down that rabbit hole. But one key thing he said is about they're licking their lips to gut it. And what we've seen is the national, federal politics. We've seen them lick their lips to gut the Voting Rights Act. And so when I look at me personally and my support of it, when I look at how the language is and how it's drawn from top to bottom and knowing that the importance of the chronological order of what stuff is, the codification of the Voting Rights Act with the extra implementation behind it, it makes sense to me because what we've seen is in a lot of states, I think outside of Texas, most of the states like Pennsylvania and some other states, the federal government has punted back to the states, right? And so the states are the ones that end up having to make the ultimate decision. I feel like if we have this in our Constitution that protects our Voting Rights Act that's been gutted by our federal government, I think that just gives us extra protection against like actual gerrymandering. And we can go back to how a lot of these districts that are drawn now were drawn to cut certain folks out and for certain people and certain representatives or senators or whatever. But at the end of the day, I feel like there is a way we can come together and actually talk and say, hey, boom, 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 which we should have did from the beginning. But if I had to choose, I felt personally like I chose the right decision.
J.B. Johnson, I don't think it's fair to say the Republicans are in the supermajority because of a gerrymandered district. Just so happens that the vast majority of the state voted for Republican.
True, and the vast majority of the state voted for clean, voted for raising the minimum wage.
Is that going to be their argument, is that this was passed by the voters, so you shouldn't try to overrule the voters?
Well, typically when voters cast their votes in a plurality for one thing, you know, commensurate to the next thing, you take that to the bank. It's funny you say, you know, if we had this in the Constitution, you know, it should offer some protections. Republicans would just sue the Constitution. I mean, it's always about moving the goalposts. Talking about cheating in elections. For a party that can't stand attorneys, you guys definitely get litigious when outcomes don't go your way. And so I
remember the ACLU, they sue the government.
Yeah, but you know us on the front end, we're coming in with attorneys. It's about the back end when Republicans come in when they don't actually like the outcome. So 1.4 million people supported this thing, but we're going to find some tenets to sue. Things that people typically like, they don't come fully formed out the gate. We, over time, make them better, perfect the union. This is what we do. We don't
the argument's going to be the voters voted for this,
because
don't mess
Republicans
with it.
don't like
What
it.
is the argument against it if you're in the Missouri legislature?
Well, I take Representative Franks and JP at their word. I think that they're taking the positions that they're taking because they honestly believe that it's the right position to take. From a Republican political perspective, though, one of the things that makes us so anxious about this is that from a political standpoint, this completely cleaves the Democrat Party in half. This will come forward in the legislature, and you will have one half of the Democratic Party on the Republican side, and you will have another
half?
A third.
You might have a couple. I wonder how many actually, when you get down into these district things. But there is some issues, I think, Representative, that I think even you've addressed, that you'll have to be careful when you draw these maps not to dilute African-American representation.
Absolutely, you have to, and that's no matter what the process is, right? We have areas that are concentrated with minority representation, and it should be that way. And so no matter how we draw the maps, no matter whether Clean Missouri passed or not, we should have a democratic process, right? Yeah. A way of going about it to whereas we keep, because at the beginning, everybody knew where I was at. I met with Representative Dogan and talked it out. I talked out with many Republicans, but I talked it out with Democrats. I talked it out with lawyers. I called everybody I knew because I wanted to make the right decision.
Before we go, I want to ask you, there's a new dynamic leader, a young leader, Crystal Quaid from Springfield, the leader of the House Democrats. Tell us about her.
Crystal's amazing. I was fortunate enough to come in. We all came in together as freshmen. And when I say just hit the ground running, and not just with fighting, right, like fighting the opposite side, but actually saying, you know what, we're going to keep our fight intact, but what are we going to do to get stuff done? And she's been able to work with the budget chair. She's been able to work with who's now our Speaker of the House and actually help get stuff done, be a real team player, show leadership. I don't think we could have chose a better person to be our leader.
Well, Shamed Dogan with a minute left, who won the week?
It has to be new Attorney General Eric Schmitt. I think the people of Missouri also won because Eric is a great public servant, and he is going to do a great job in that role.
Gregg Keller, who won the week?
I'm going to go with Josh Hawley, won by better than 6 points as a front runner to be on the Judiciary Committee. We're going to be running a lot of very conservative judges through that Judiciary Committee.
Kind of surreal to see a Missouri gathered by Mitt Romney in that picture.
We're going to continue peopling the federal judiciary with very conservative judges for a generation going forward, and Hawley's going to be a big part of that.
Who won the week?
The Missouri Republican Party. I mean, it's hard to say with the talent, the bench. Eric Schmitt now locking in the AG position, the governor being able to pick the next treasurer. I find it ironic that only Jay Ashcroft is the only elected Republican statewide for the position.
Terrible Democrats that wrote that state constitution. Who won the week?
I say our House Democratic Caucus. Outside of electing Crystal Quaid as leadership, 5 out of 7 of our positions are held by minority members. It shows diversity. It shows the fact that we will represent the entire state, from Greene County to Jackson County to St. Louis City to St. Louis County. So I think that we have a diverse mix of fighters.
It is a different day there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna break the rule and say too. Rob Dixon won the Lifetime Leadership Award of the Missouri Chamber. Rob Dixon has been totally cut loose the last 5 months and is doing a great job. And Jay Ashcroft. This is the Blue Book from the turn of the last century. Jay Ashcroft brought the Blue Book back. It is an important record of our history. Jay Ashcroft, I think, appreciates that. And I say he won the week because now you can go to the Secretary of State's website and order your copy. The history of your state. It's an important thing. We'll see you after the Thanksgiving break on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.